Hello, magical friends. Welcome to the holiday edition of Flippin' Frenzy. So we sent each other thrift finds from our stash to upcycle what was sent to us, and we didn't know it was coming. So it's always a fun challenge when we do this. So my box came from Shayla, and she sent me quite a few goodies, and I chose to upcycle 3 of them for this video today. So the first one I'm going to start with is this frame, and I am putting a quick coat of Bonding Boss by Dixie Belle on it just to give it some grip and also to make sure none of that red is going to bleed through. The next one I'm going to start working on while that is drying is this enamelware pot. Now it does have some rust spots, and I wasn't too much worried about the rust, but I didn't want the enamel to chip off where the dents and the rust were. So I gave it a sanding just on the spots where the enamel was kind of chipped, and I wanted to make sure it stayed intact. So by sanding those little rough edges, it was a little more steady and sure that those enamel pieces weren't going to chip off. Then I took it outside and gave it, well, first I cleaned it up real well, and then I took it outside and gave it a coat of Rust-Oleum white spray paint, and that helps to seal in that rust so it will not continue to rust anymore, and also gave me a nice base coat for working with later. Okay, back to the frame while that pot is drying. So I decided to take what is left of a piece of recycled decoupage paper that came in a past Sonnets Makers box, and I'm going to decoupage this paper onto this frame. And you saw me kind of playing with one of the IOD Christmas molds called Winter Forage, I believe, which has some nice evergreen shapes in there. So first I'm going to decoupage this paper down, and this time I actually decided to use a top coat. I have seen other people use top coat as a decoupage medium, and I thought, well, I have this kind of gummied up Rust-Oleum clear matte sealer, so I used that, and it actually worked out really well. So now I'm kind of cutting off the extra, and I cut the center of the frame. I cut that paper open so that it doesn't pull, because as the paper dries, it will pull and get taut, and I didn't want the paper to get stretched out, which could cause some buckling of the paper. So now I'm kind of folding those edges over and decoupaging those edges down, folding the corners in so it's a nice neat look, and then I will do the center as well. So while you're watching this process, let me introduce myself. My name is Jen, and I am the Upcycling Alchemist. I love to take thrifted finds and turn them into something beautiful. I call that alchemy, turning trash into treasure, turning metal into gold. So kind of a fun play on words there. And I have been working on growing my YouTube channel. So if this is something that you are interested in following, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe, just so I can grow this YouTube channel and be able to bring more and more of this kind of video to you with thrift flips, thrift hauls, crafting, and all kinds of fun stuff. So this part was a little bit tedious. I was taking the little scraps of paper to kind of patch the inside corners, because as I tore the paper and folded it over into the inside of the frame, it did leave the white corners exposed. So I was taking these little bits and covering them, and it was a little bit more tedious than normal because my fingers were sticky from the decoupage medium, but we got it done. So now I'm taking that Winter Forage mold from IOD's Christmas release, and I am dusting my mold with cornstarch so that my clay will release easier. And I am warming up my IOD air dry clay and pushing it into those molds. Now this one that I'm working with right now is actually a really delicate mold, and I did struggle with this one, but of course it was the one I wanted to use the most because it most closely matched the evergreen branches on the paper. So I did cast 3 of these, and then one of the larger design that you see under my hand there. Yep, that one right there. So this one was a little bit easier to cast. So while you're watching this, I do want to point out one thing about these these IOD molds is they do have this micro rim where it's kind of a raised edge around the shapes, and it makes it really easy to get a nice clean edge on your molds because you just rub your thumb against the micro rim and it kind of cuts the clay really nicely. So I cast a few of these, and while you're watching this, I do want to tell you that I just recently became an IOD stockist. I actually started right at the release of the holiday collection. So I sell my IOD products in both of my booths. I do not have a website at the moment, something on my to-do list, but if you would like to order from me, you can send me an email or message me through Facebook or however you want to get a hold of me, and I would be happy to ship you out what you need. I don't have everything, but I can get anything pretty quickly. Fortunately for me, the IOD distribution center is very close to where I live, so I get my orders within 2 days. So what I do offer is if you order from me online, whether you saw it on a Facebook ad, you saw it on YouTube, any of those things, I do send you free gifts from my stash with your order. So if that's something you're interested in, my email address and Facebook pages and Instagram page are in the description below. Okay, back to making some stuff. So I am using Titebond Quick and Thick to glue my molds down to the frame. And you can see me here in a second take a paintbrush and try to clean up the glue that squeezed out from the edges, which was kind of unnecessary because once I started working with these much smaller, more delicate molds, I realized that I was just going to have to paint the glue directly onto the frame. So I needed to squeeze some more out, and I ended up just painting the glue all over the frame and giving it kind of some texture as well as a different finish. I've never done this before. Now, if I was going to be painting over this and not with the decoupage paper underneath, obviously I don't want to paint over the decoupage paper, but if I was to paint over this, would actually cause a really cool crackle effect in my paint. You don't even need the crackle medium. You can just use glue, let the glue dry, and then when you paint over the glue, it will cause a crackle effect. All right, so that is all dried. And the next morning, my dog had to be on my lap. He was not going to be happy if he was not laying on my lap, but I also needed to paint this frame up. So I'm painting with a dog on my lap on the couch because that's what you do when you have a doodle and he's needy and wants to lay with you and loves to sit on your lap. So sometimes you just paint with a dog on your lap. It's a good life right here, I'll tell you what. So for those of you that don't know, this little fluff ball on my lap, his name is Rowan, and he's 3.5, and he's the best dog ever. He is a mini golden doodle. Okay, back to the painting. So I started with a Waverly color, and I don't remember the name of the color. I decided it was too light. I was trying to get a little bit closer of a color to the paper, the greenery on the paper. So then I took Eden from DIY Paint, which is my favorite green from DIY. It's such a pretty green. And then for this larger mold here, I came in with Waverly chalk paint in the color Fern. And these are just the base colors. I do end up going over them with different colors towards the end here to give them some more texture. So to seal these up, first I'm going to use clear wax, just Waverly clear wax, and I'm going over the whole thing. And the reason why I went over with clear wax before I came in with my antiquing wax is because it makes it a little bit easier to pull back some of that darker wax if I don't want that look. It kind of acts as like a base coat, then you can erase and pull back the dark wax better. So I started pulling it back with a dry paper towel, realized I wanted to pull back even more, so I used a baby wipe. And so right now it's super muddy and gross looking, but when I pull back, what it does is it gives that yellow a bit more tone. It kind of tones it down and gives it more of like a fall vibe, as well as it gives the molds that dimension and also hides that white on the bottom of the molds because it's nearly impossible, unless you were using a super fine tip paintbrush and took hours and hours and hours to get the white all the way down to the paper, the clay covered all the way down to the paper, and it's just not worth the time. But by using the antiquing wax on the edges there, it kind of closes that gap and you don't see the white clay anymore. So now I'm coming in with this lighter green. I believe it's called moss, but I could be wrong. And I'm kind of dry brushing over the greenery to give it some more dimension. I always find it kind of amazing the difference that dry brushing will give on these molds, because it's such a quick, easy process and it makes a world of difference. It really brings out those details by just giving a quick highlight to those high points in your mold. And then on that larger mold, I came in with the fern green from Waverly for the high points on that. And now I'm coming in with, I believe this is weathered wood from DIY. And I also came in with truffle because I needed a little bit of darker tone for the branches to give it that brown. And the two different browns gave it a lot of tonal variation. Okay, back to our pot here. I am taking Fusion paint in Champlain. This is the first full-size Fusion that I have purchased and used, and I have to tell you, I am loving it way more than I thought I would. It's a beautiful creamy tone, and this paint goes in so smoothly. So what was interesting about this first coat of Rust-Oleum spray paint is I did give it the coat during some pretty humid, foggy weather, and it was at night. So I'm not sure if it was because it was left overnight and it was foggy or misty, or if it was just because of the enamel, or I put too many coats on. Whatever it was, it did make a weird texture, and it's kind of cool. It almost looks like a crackle texture. And by giving it that coat of Fusion Champlain, it kind of gave it a more matte finish than the spray paint did, and I like the color a lot better. Okay, I am way behind in my narration here. So I took the IOD Transfer Christmas Joy from the holiday release, and I took two pieces that fit beautifully on this pot, and both of them have holly leaves, so we're going to go with that theme. And IOD transfers are so easy to use, especially on this kind of paint that has a sealer built into it. So you can see, I just put it on there, I rubbed it, and then pulled the plastic back as I was rubbing, and it went on beautifully. I burnished it with my fingertips as well as the plastic, and now I am back to my winter forage mold, and I am pulling this time some holly leaves from the same mold. So it's really nice. It has a few different types of winter plant parts. I don't know what to call it. It has holly leaves and pine cones and pine branches, and it's really pretty. Very useful. Oh goodness, it's late and I can't talk straight, but we're gonna get there. It's fine. But the holly leaves are really pretty on this mold. So I end up casting 4 different pieces, 2 for each side, to kind of frame out those transfers, and they go kind of between the transfers and the handles. So again, I'm using my Titebond Quick and Thick glue to glue my molds down, and then I'm painting over that with the same color of Champlain so that my molds are the same color as the pot. So I do end up giving these molds just 1 coat because it covered pretty well, and I did paint them right away even though the clay was wet. This does kind of help to prevent some of the cracking, though I actually do like cracking in my clay. I think that it gives it a cool vintage effect. So I did this step for both sides so that I had holly leaves on both sides. So whoever is using this pot can have it in the center and it's nice to view from all sides, or they can have it, they can turn it around for a different view. Okay, so all my molds are painted now, and while that's drying, I moved on to my third project. So this is that prescription box that Shyla sent me, and I did actually look up the value of this because I thought it was pretty cool, and I was like, oh, that's unique. Or not unique, but different, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to paint over something that was valuable. They were only selling for $4 or $5, so I went ahead and made it something that was a bit more valuable by turning it into a little Christmas mailbox. So I am using the IOD stamp called Christmas Post, which is also from the holiday release this year. And I'm pulling different pieces from it. So I wanted the sides of this to kind of look like a postcard. So this is the side of the box, and I chose a border and a postage stamp looking thing that looks like a canceled postage stamp and the word Christmas. So this is going to look kind of like a Christmas postcard. I am taking a baby wipe and pulling off the extra ink that gets stuck onto the side of your stamps and then placing it down carefully. Once you place it, you're committed. You do not want to shift it or move it around because that's how you get blurs. So I did kind of pull a little bit. When I lifted it up, it did kind of slip off the side. So I was trying to clean it up, but I actually just ended up painting over it later. And it was just a slight amount. Probably nobody would ever notice, but I'm a perfectionist and had to fix it. Even though it was so minor, it probably would have never been seen. I always clean my baby stamps. Did I mention it's late and I can't talk and I've been working all day and it's a Monday? Anyway, what I meant to say was I always clean my stamps with a baby wipe, and you want to do this to keep your stamps lasting long and clean so that the ink doesn't get gummed up in there and make your images not as crisp. So what you just saw me do was take the Santa from the Christmas Wishes stamp set and put him on the top there, and notice that I hold the stamp down with one hand and then I kind of push down around with the other hand, and then I shift around. You want to make sure you're holding your stamp down with one hand firmly so that you don't slip around and cause those smears. So because this is a Christmas mailbox and you're always going to send letters to Santa around Christmas time, I wanted to use type from the Apothecary Labels stamp to type Dear Santa. And then I thought this wishing you a joyful Christmas part was really cute too, because it's kind of like you're wishing Santa a joyful Christmas, which is cute. So that's on the front of this little box where it would actually open. And you could put letters inside. And of course, this was a, what do you want to call it? Prescription box. So we're turning it into Santa's mailbox. I'm using the same layout on the other side as I did with the Christmas postcard looking thing. One of the things that I like to do that I haven't seen other IOD creators do before on their videos is I like to take a paper towel and kind of very carefully blot, not wipe, but blot where the ink is kind of piled up under the stamp, because it kind of almost like a bead, and it kind of beads up, and I like to have a smoother, more even finish on my stamping. So I very carefully take a paper towel and blot it down. You have to be very careful with this, and I like to do a quick heat set first so that the ink is a little bit already set, and then I take the paper towel, very carefully blot those heavy parts, and then I heat set the rest of it. So yeah, here I am coming in and cleaning up some of my parts that nobody would ever notice, but I'm a perfectionist and I have to go and fix them, even though it's really unnecessary. So just kind of little smears here and there, fingerprints, whatever, covering those with some of that paint. And this project is done. So now I'm coming in and putting the finishing touches on this pot. I'm using a light brown glaze, and I'm putting a pretty light coat on, and I am going to come back and wipe it off pretty heavily with a wet baby wipe. I wanted very little glaze on here. I didn't want it to look too super grungy. I kind of wanted it clean but a little aged, and I really wanted to have that glaze in the molds to kind of bring out some of that texture. So you can see I'm putting on a very light layer. I'm not letting it dry long. I'm coming in with that baby wipe pretty much immediately and pulling it back. But to keep the coat even, I am putting the glaze on all of it. It does change the tone of the cream paint just a little bit, so I wanted it to be even across the entire pot. So now I'm coming in with my antique gold rub and buff, and I did have to go to work. I was doing this early in the morning. I like to get up early and craft before work. It's just a great way to start off the day. But I didn't want to have a gilded finger all day at work or any of that. So I did use a glove for this, but usually I don't really care if my fingers get messy because that's the life of a crafter. But I'm putting this on the high points of those molds. I did kind of put some here and there on the handles, and then I went around the rim as well. I thought this gave it a nice finishing touch, and by putting it on the handles and the rim, it tied in the molds to the rest of the pot beautifully. So of these 3 projects, what do you think? Which one do you like the best? Would you have changed anything about these? I really enjoyed that pot. I thought it would be really cute as I staged it with some pine cones in it or any sort of bowl filler, or you could put a tree in it, all kinds of stuff. And this little mailbox was really cute and fun. And I did enjoy the process of making the frame, but I think my favorite is probably the pot. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments, and if you are interested in any IOD products, please get a hold of me. I do have them in my booth in Henry Row Antique Mall in Monterey and Old Town Salinas Antiques. Thank you so much for watching my channel, watching my video, commenting, subscribing, liking. All of those things really do help our channels grow. So thank you so much for watching, and keep making some magic.